The first thing I noticed wasn't the laughter. It was the chair, a narrow metal folding chair, tucked slightly to the side of the ballroom, its legs uneven on the polished marble floor. My place card, a plain white slip with my name typed neatly, was taped to the back. No lace, no gold script, no floral decoration like the rest of the tables. Just me isolated near the service door, surrounded by the quiet hum of people moving trays and arranging silverware. I stood there for a moment, clutching my small navy dress in my hand, feeling the weight of everyone's eyes, or the absence of them. No one looked at me, not my parents, not my sister, not even the distant relatives who had once smiled at me during holidays. The music swelled behind me, a soft romantic song my sister had picked for the processional. It felt sharp and hollow in that moment. Then my aunt leaned in, not quietly enough, and whispered, "Oh, they put you with the staff." I forced a smile. That's what I've always done when the world reminded me how small I felt. Smile, nod, absorb, and keep moving. The laughter came, soft but unmistakable, casual, dismissive, not cruel, but enough to make it sting all the same. Like a breeze brushing past a bruise, I told myself it was nothing. I told myself weddings are chaotic. I told myself I was overreacting, and yet I felt my chest tighten in a way that memory could not explain. I sat down. The servers bustled around me, whispering to each other about which dishes went to which table needed another bread basket, which table didn't tip as expected. One of them smiled politely at me, holding a tray of sparkling water. "Do you want some?" I shook my head, smiling again, because politeness was easier than explaining, easier than exposing the tremor in my hands. "I'm fine," I said softly. Inside, something folded in on itself. I remembered when my sister and I were kids, how she would braid my hair before school, how she would whisper secrets about boys and school projects as if no one else existed. I remembered the night she got engaged, standing in my small apartment, clutching my pillow while tears ran down her cheeks. "I'm scared. I don't deserve this happiness," she had whispered. I had held her, stroked her hair, and nodded. I never corrected her when she assumed I had nothing to do with the place she now stood in, dreaming about her wedding. I watched her from my seat near the exit as she walked down the aisle, radiant in her white dress, her bouquet a perfect mix of roses and lilies, just as I had helped her plan months ago. The chandeliers reflected light across the room, the marble floors gleaming, every detail approved by me months before. She didn't see me, no, not really, and she didn't have to. I thought about the many times I had shown up quietly, paid for things my family took for granted, ensured the right staff were hired, the menus perfected, the flowers sourced. All of it done quietly, under names and contracts they would never recognize. And now, here I was, invisible, seated like a stranger among people who served them for a living. I took a deep breath and let the calm I had practiced for years wash over me. I smiled again, not because I felt happy, but because I had learned that showing dignity is stronger than showing hurt. The music continued to swell. I adjusted my clutch on my lap, feeling the cool metal of the chair beneath me. I noticed the subtle exchanges, the glances of embarrassment, the murmurs, the polite smiles that didn't reach their eyes. And I realized no one had to tell me why I was here. I already knew, and yet I stayed, because sometimes watching quietly is more powerful than speaking. Sometimes the weight of knowing your own worth is enough to hold a room in balance, even when no one else sees it. I looked at my sister, glowing and laughing with her friends, completely unaware that the woman seated near the service door had played a part in making all of this possible. I smiled once more, then I waited. Dinner began without me. Not literally, of course the plates arrived, but the careful orchestration of courses, the laughter, the toasts, the shared glances across the table, All of it seemed to belong to someone else. My place setting was meticulously arranged, silverware polished, napkin folded just so, but no one came to fill the seat beside me. A cousin, bubbly and oblivious, paused at my chair with a half-empty glass of champagne. "You should have dressed differently," she said, her tone light, but with an edge I couldn't ignore. "This is a wedding, not a I don't know, a family gathering for the underprivileged." I nodded politely, my lips curling into the same smile I had been wearing since I arrived. "You're right," I said softly. My voice was calm, almost too calm. Inside, my chest ached, a dull heaviness that pulsed with every polite gesture. She glanced around, then whispered in a lower tone, "It's just you know how things are. They didn't want it to look uneven. Uneven." The word hovered in the air, soft and casual, as though my value could be measured in gold scripts, embroidered tablecloths, and floral arrangements. I let the words pass through me, leaving no trace on my face, no crack in my composure. My father didn't notice me at all. He passed my table, glass in hand, eyes fixed on my sister, as if I were a ghost. My mother followed behind him, shoulders straight, head high, sliding past me as if I were invisible. I told myself it was wedding stress, a million tiny pressures converging. I told myself it wasn't personal. But when the speeches began, the weight of reality settled quietly, inescapably, across my chest. My sister stood before the crowd, radiant and confident, thanking everyone for being there, for shaping her life, for helping her prepare. Every name was spoken, every hand was mentioned, except mine. I felt a pinch behind my eyes and swallowed it down. I raised my glass anyway, because that's what I had always done. I raised it to the idea of family, to the shared memories I had kept in my heart, to the years I had quietly ensured that everything around her was perfect. The champagne in my glass was warm, flat, not nearly as sparkling as those in the hands of the real guests, but I smiled and nodded as though it didn't matter. I remembered the night she confided in me, trembling with excitement and fear before the engagement party. How I had promised to make everything perfect for her, from the flowers to the food to the music, quietly, behind the scenes. She had trusted me, relied on me, never questioning my absence from the spotlight. And now, sitting there among servers who were polite but distant, I realized the truth. My family didn't just underestimate me, they assumed I had nothing worth noticing. When the toasts ended and the applause rose, I stood. No announcement, no confrontation. Just the quiet, deliberate act of lifting myself from a seat that had never been mine to begin with. My hands were steady, my posture calm. I smoothed my dress, took a deep breath, and walked out through the service door. The hall remained alive with chatter, laughter, and music. I left behind all of it, the smiles that didn't reach their eyes, the whispered comments, the casual dismissals. I didn't look back, I didn't need to. Outside, the cool night air hit my face, crisp and freeing. The sounds of the wedding faded as I walked toward my car, each step lighter than the one before. For the first time that day, I felt the calm I had been holding on to. A quiet confidence that no laughter, no judgment, no seat in a ballroom could take from me. I thought about the contracts I had signed, the staff I had hired, the countless hours I had spent ensuring the wedding would be perfect. None of it had been recognized, none of it had been acknowledged, and yet it didn't diminish my worth. Not one bit. Sometimes I realized the most powerful thing isn't proving your value. It's showing up, quietly, and choosing your own dignity above the noise of their laughter. And I was finally doing that. The weeks after the wedding were quiet, too quiet. I returned to my routine, the rhythm I had built over years of proving myself quietly. Early mornings at the office, late nights reviewing contracts, long calls with staff who now treated me with the respect my family had never offered. My life was busy, full, and productive, but every time I thought of that chair near the service door, a dull ache reminded me of what had been left unspoken, what had been overlooked, what had been assumed. I didn't tell anyone what happened at the wedding. Not my friends, not my colleagues, not even the family members I still spoke to occasionally. Not because I wanted to punish anyone, not because I craved revenge. I kept it silent because I was learning something deeper. Some lessons have more power when they're carried quietly. Then, 2 weeks later, my assistant knocked on my office door. "There's a request from the wedding venue," she said carefully, holding a tablet in her hand. I didn't need her to explain further. I knew. I had signed the contracts. I had owned the building, the land, the staff, every detail. What she had called a friend of the owner favor, my family had mistaken for coincidence. They didn't realize I had always been quietly in control. That night, I watched the emails come in. Requests for clarification, calls about payments, reminders about overdue invoices. The same people who had laughed at me, whispered about me, seated me with the servers now had to follow the rules I had set in place months ago. Policies were enforced. Discounts expired. Staff that had been there to serve them without question now treated them as they would any paying client. I felt no joy in this, no satisfaction. I wasn't gloating. I was simply observing, and then my phone rang. It was my mother. Her voice was careful, measured, almost fragile. We didn't realize. If we had known. I let the silence stretch. Long enough for her to feel the weight of her own words. "You always knew." I said softly, the words almost a whisper. "You just never asked." She didn't respond immediately. The pause stretched over seconds that felt like minutes. Somewhere in that silence, I could hear everything that had gone unsaid. All the small dismissals, the assumptions, the laughter. I could hear the quiet lessons of my own dignity settling into place. My sister called later. She cried, but it wasn't about the seat at the table. It wasn't about the laughter or the whispered comments. She cried about the inconvenience, about realizing she had misjudged someone she thought she knew. I didn't interrupt. I didn't correct her. I just listened, letting her unravel while I remained calm, collected, whole. When she finished, I said simply, "I hope your marriage is full of honesty. That's all. No explanation. No lecture. No public revelation. Just a statement of truth, measured and quiet, leaving the responsibility of understanding to her." After I hung up, I sat back in my office chair and let the quiet settle over me. There was a weight, yes, a weight of knowing what had been done, of understanding what had been overlooked. But there was also relief. Relief in the realization that I didn't need to fight for recognition. I didn't need to prove my worth to those who had assumed I had none. My value was not dependent on their approval. I understood more clearly than ever that power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers through patience, through careful observation, through letting others live in the space they have created with their own choices. And I realized another truth. Dignity isn't something you grant to yourself once. It's something you practice over and over. You practice it when you stay calm while the world underestimates you. You practice it when you walk away silently, without argument. You practice it when you allow time to show what your quiet strength has already built. That night, as I looked out the office window at the city lights reflecting in the glass, I felt a rare sense of peace. Not the kind that comes from revenge or retribution. Not the kind that comes from forcing others to recognize you, but the kind that comes from knowing, deeply, unshakably, that your life, your work, and your dignity exist whether anyone else notices or laughs. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. I didn't attend the follow-up brunch. I didn't send emails explaining myself. I didn't post anything on social media, even though I could have, because peace doesn't need an audience. The days stretched into weeks, and slowly, the subtle consequences of that wedding chair began to reveal themselves. My family adjusted to life without the special treatment they had always assumed would continue. Staff that once deferred to them unquestioningly now treated them like any other clients. Maintenance requests were processed according to policy. Requests for friend favors were politely declined. I didn't gloat. I didn't whisper their mistakes to anyone. I simply observed from a quiet distance, watching them navigate the reality they had never considered, the rules, the boundaries, the world as it existed beyond their assumptions. Was enough? No laughter, no sneers, no whispers could reach me anymore. My dignity was intact, my self-respect was whole. Some family members surprised me. My cousin called, apologizing quietly, her voice uncertain but sincere. My aunt sent a card, simple and heartfelt, acknowledging my contributions without fanfare. A few others reached out slowly, realizing in their own ways that I had always been stronger than they assumed, that I had never needed their recognition to matter. And then there were those who didn't change. My sister, for instance, remained awkwardly polite, careful around me, unable to reconcile the quiet truth I had allowed to unfold on its own. She never asked for explanations, never tried to mend the invisible gap between us, and that was fine. I didn't need closure from her or anyone else. Closure had come from within. I learned something profound. The loudest, most dramatic gestures aren't necessary to teach lessons. Sometimes the power of calm patience, of living in quiet integrity, is enough. People see the truth in their own time, and sometimes the consequences of their actions are more effective than any confrontation could ever be. A month later, I returned to the venue not for them, but for myself. I walked through the halls, familiar and comforting, observing the chandeliers reflecting light across polished floors, the staff moving efficiently, professionally, respectfully. I remembered that narrow folding chair near the service door, and instead of anger or resentment, I felt gratitude. Gratitude for the moment that had forced me to recognize my own worth, my own strength. I thought about the lessons I had learned. That respect must be earned, yes, but also that it must be commanded quietly through boundaries, through patience, and through the unwavering knowledge of your own value. That kindness does not require sacrifice of self-respect. That silence, carefully held, can be a teacher more powerful than words. Sometimes I caught myself smiling at the memory of the wedding, the contrast between laughter and dignity, ignorance and awareness. Not mockingly, not with bitterness, but with understanding. That day had been painful, yes, humiliating, perhaps, but it had also been necessary. I realized that real victory is quiet. It is measured not in applause or recognition, but in the steady calm of knowing you have acted with integrity, that you have walked away without compromise, without drama, without giving anyone power to diminish your self-worth. And in that quiet realization, I felt the kind of peace that doesn't fade, the kind that comes when you stop trying to prove yourself to those who will never see it, and instead nurture the life you know you deserve. I never told anyone the full truth of my involvement in that wedding. It wasn't needed. The reality spoke for itself. The policies I had put in place, the respect from staff, the subtle shift in family dynamics, all of it reflected the quiet justice of boundaries and self-respect. Sometimes people don't disrespect you because they hate you. They do it because they are comfortable not seeing you clearly. And sometimes the most powerful response is letting them live with that clarity on their own, while you continue to walk through life with grace, wisdom, and calm strength. I smiled once more, sipping my coffee in the morning sunlight, knowing I had finally chosen myself. And in that choice, I found the peace I had been seeking all along,